Foreman versus Ali, Red Sox versus Yankees, Kanye versus Taylor Swift, now Chicago versus Trump. The president's calling fake news on Chi-Town's mayor after he called the plan to send federal agents into the Windy City tyranny. Plus, a Trump supporter in New York is battling his small town over the pro-president banner he displays on his property. I'll tell you about the irony of the town's law banning these flags. And Philly fanatic. When an irate woman demanded a home run baseball from the hands of a child, Dad forked it over. I'll explain this father's reason for giving in to the woman now known as Philly's Karen. Those stories and more today, Monday, September 8th. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. If you weren't keeping tabs on the president's social media over the weekend, you might have missed a doozy. Trump posted an AI picture of himself looking like Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore from the movie Apocalypse Now, and wrote, borrowing from the film's most famous line, quote, "I love the smell of deportation in the morning. Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War." Now, as you well know, the president has threatened to send federal agents and the National Guard into the Windy City. He even said last week, quote, "We're going in." But notably, he didn't offer a timeline. And the president was asked if he was, quote, "going to war with Chicago" by a reporter on Sunday. And here's what he had to say.
Are you trying to go to war with Chicago?
When you say that, darling, that's fake news.
Well, why
I don't go to war.
Defense?
Listen, be quiet. Listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second grade. We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our city. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson ordered local police not to cooperate with agents or troops Trump may deploy to his city, an effort to, in his words, quote, "stand up against this tyranny." Florida's Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo vowed to end, quote, "every last one of the state's vaccine mandates for school children" late last week. As you can imagine, the move got people talking. Vaccine critics were loving it, hailing him as a hero, and everybody else pointed out that, unlike Vegas, what happens in Florida does not stay in Florida, meaning that ending vaccine mandates in the Sunshine State could impact the other 49. But that fact does not seem to faze Ladapo in the slightest. Here he is on CNN's State of the Union Sunday, sparring with host Jake Tapper, when he was asked if he and his team studied the impact of their decision before announcing it.
In terms of, analysis, well, ultimately, this is an issue very clearly of parents' rights. So do I need to analyze whether it's appropriate for parents to be able to decide what goes into their children's bodies? I don't need to do an analysis on that.
Ladapo has failed to give a timeline for his plan, which has drawn criticism from Republican Senator Rick Scott, and even some caution from President Trump, who noted, quote, "You have some vaccines that are so amazing." Jack Schlossberg. He's the grandson of John F. Kennedy and a popular lefty influencer who announced over the weekend that he's exploring a run for Congress, which shouldn't really be a huge surprise since we know how much a Kennedy loves running for anything. Congressman Jerry Nadler of New York's 12th District recently announced that he would not be seeking an 18th term, and the Kennedy scion is potentially entering a crowded field. The 12th District covers right where I am sitting right now in the middle of Manhattan. Now, you might have heard of Schlossberg before. He's made a bit of a name for himself online by repeatedly trolling his uncle, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., or you might know him for some other kind of oddball, even controversial online antics, like questioning whether Vice President J.D. Vance's wife, Usha, is, quote, hotter than his late grandmother, Jackie O, or his potty-mouthed tirade against Elon Musk's Doge. Now, his announcement comes after he posted a poll on Instagram asking followers if he should run. 91% said he should. To be fair, they are his followers, so take that for what it's worth. Now to our big story, college campus swatting calls. Between August 21st and August 25th, at least 10 universities across the country were thrown into chaos just as they began the new school year, thanks to fake active shooter calls to local law enforcement. You might remember me talking about one of them recently at Villanova University, a shooting that turned out to be a hoax. Now, the practice has a name. It's called swatting, an attempt to mobilize emergency services when there is no emergency. And it's not as simple as a few bad actors making crank calls to 911. It's actually far more complex. The most recent uptick is largely thanks to an online group that calls itself Purgatory. These cyber criminals use AI tools to create realistic sounds of screaming and gunfire while they're on the phone with authorities, baiting them to respond. New York Post reporter Zoe Hussein has been covering this story, and she joins me now. Zoe, this is sick. I mean, what kind of person does something like this? Tell me about this group and how do they operate?
Yeah, so experts have linked at least 10 calls into universities in recent weeks to this group called Purgatory. And so they operate on Telegram, which is kind of an encrypted messaging platform. And they offer services for these swatting calls, which means calling a false emergency report into a university or into some other location, such as an airport or casino or another type of school. And so basically, the individuals are either within the group are calling these swatting calls in for a variety of motivations. And then there are sometimes individuals or groups outside that are paying the group to make these calls. So
I just
yeah,
can't wrap my head around it. Like, as you're saying it, I just cannot wrap my head around why someone, a group of people would do something like this. Having just come off of covering a horrific shooting in Minnesota, the thought that someone is playing pretend and pranking like this, I don't understand it. Is there a motive? Do we know the motivations?
Yeah, so there is some financial motivation, but that's definitely not the biggest reason why people are doing this. So a lot of it is for notoriety. A lot of it is because they enjoy seeing the immediate media coverage of the law enforcement response at these universities. They like seeing people that are panicked. They like knowing that they created chaos. And I think a large part of that is because school shootings are so prevalent in this country that, it is something that really strikes a chord within a lot of us, that a lot of us are terrified of something like that happening. And so even just knowing that people are calling these threats in is enough to really stir a lot of emotions in individuals. And there is some evidence, not necessarily within this recent spate of these university shootings, but that people like foreign terrorist organizations, organized crime groups, like foreign just groups and militaries are using Purgatory and their services to call in swatting calls as well and to try to organize these things. And that is mainly to just kind of undermine US institutions and sow more discord in our country. And that's also, another more terrifying thing to consider.
As I'm hearing you explain it, I'm also thinking as a kind of nefarious strategic move, you call in one of these swatting calls, all of law enforcement, especially in these smaller local precincts, respond. That diverts resources from actual emergencies or crimes that could have been happening in that exact same time. So I can imagine, obviously, from a public safety perspective and from a law enforcement perspective, it's very frustrating and upsetting. But I have to think it's also on a larger scale, really problematic for them. So can law enforcement do anything to combat these swatting calls?
I think there's a lot of integrative approaches that can be used. One thing is we do need, intelligence experts and people that are training 911 dispatchers to maybe listen for themes in these calls, to kind of have, maybe a way to know if potentially the call that they're getting could be a swatting call. We also need people that can, monitor these Telegram channels and these things, intelligence experts that can precipitate a potential increase in swatting calls as well. And then we need, and we've seen thankfully across the country with these calls that law enforcement and people on the ground have been doing what they can to respond accordingly. And the best thing we can do is just streamline our active shooting protocols and make sure that people, know not to panic, know how to follow law enforcement, instructions, and that we're also, law enforcement is getting information out to the public as soon as possible about what's actually going on.
And it does seem like prevention in something like this, obviously punishment to catch the people who are doing it, but prevention would be really key, as you said, sort of streamlining it before it gets to the point where law enforcement is getting the call, because we've all heard the fable, boy who cries wolf. Well, finally, if they're not responding to it because they think it's swatting, but it's real, that's unfathomable. So I can see how important prevention with something like this might be. Zoe, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you so much.
A disabled Vietnam veteran is fighting a different kind of battle. This one against the government in his small town, Croton-on-Hudson. That's a little spot north of New York City. Leonard Amakola has lived there for 67 years, and since about 2021, he's displayed a flag reading "Trump is my president" on his property. The town wants him to remove it, citing a, quote, long-standing prohibition on banners. But Amakola says it's a free speech issue. The town's mayor says that 17 other local properties have been cited for violating this same town code, not just Amakola and his MAGA flag. But Amakola and the lawyer he's now hired aren't buying it, believing that the town is targeting, quote, the content of his speech than simply the display. But in a bit of irony, the town once had a citywide banner display back in 2023 featuring hometown heroes who served in the military. Guess who was one of them? Leonard himself. And finally today, the latest on that video that is all over your social feed, the online search to shame Phillies Karen. That's the moniker given to this woman who demanded a father give her a home run baseball that he had just handed to his son. Drew Feltwell, he's a Philadelphia sports fan who was at a Phillies game in Miami on Friday night. And he was one of 6 excited fans who chased down a home run hit into the stands by Phillies outfielder Harrison Bader. He came away with the ball, walked back over to his seat, gave it to his son, Lincoln. It's a baseball fan's dream come true moment. Well, it was until this Karen comes storming over, and I mean storming over, demanding the ball and claiming it landed in her seats. What was this, your first time at a baseball game, lady? That's not how it works. Anyway, here's what Drew said to the local NBC affiliate in Philly.
I'm literally leaning back as she's in my face yelling and yelling and yelling. And I pretty much just wanted her to go away. And because I had a fork in the road, either, do something I was probably going to regret or be dad and show him how to de-escalate the situation.
Well, Karen, with the ball in hand, went back to her seat to a well-deserved wave of booing, and in true Karen and frankly Philadelphia fashion, flipped off her critics. The Marlins then delivered a bag of goodies to the Feltwells, and the home run hitter even met up with the family to deliver a signed bat to Lincoln, who should have gone home with that home run ball, but he did kind of come out on top there. And lady, finders keepers. The real headline of this story is that 2 Philly fans did not end up throwing haymakers in the stands. As a Philly fan myself, I cannot stress enough the self-control that Dad expressed in the heat of the moment. If you haven't seen the video, we have it up on the New York Post. It's an epic tantrum, and let me know what you would have done in the comments. Also, while you're there, make sure you like and follow the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Happy Monday, pals. Go Birds.